In the winter of 1932, a small prospecting crew working the frozen riverbanks near Fairbanks, Alaska, cracked open what they thought was just another ice shelf. What they found stopped every man cold. Preserved under nearly 4 feet of glacial ice was a leather satchel, perfectly intact, still containing papers, a rusted hand tool, and a small tin of matches that had been waiting there for years. Nobody knew who had left it. Nobody could explain how it had survived. And nobody, not a single man on that crew, could have imagined that this discovery was just the beginning. Because that same winter, and in the decades that followed, the ice of Alaska would slowly give back dozens of objects that had been swallowed during the hardest years America ever faced. Objects that told stories of people fighting to survive in one of the most brutal environments on Earth. Objects that should have rotted, crumbled, or disappeared forever, but didn't. Over the next few minutes, I'm going to walk you through 25 of the most remarkable, most haunting, and most forgotten objects ever recovered from Alaskan ice deposits dating to the Great Depression era. Some of these will shock you. At least 2 of them sparked legal disputes that went all the way to federal court. And number 1, I promise, will change how you think about that period in American history entirely. Before we get started, if you're new here, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. Videos like this one come out every week and you won't want to miss the next one. Let's begin with number 25. Number 25 is a cast iron skillet, roughly 12 inches across, found embedded in a seasonal ice formation along the Yukon River corridor in 1938 during a federal land survey. The skillet had been used, heavily. The surface was blackened and seasoned with the kind of deep patina that only comes from years of daily cooking over open flame. What made this particular find strange was not the skillet itself, but what was inside it. A hardened residue that laboratory analysis in later years identified as lard mixed with dried wild onion and what appeared to be bear fat. Someone had cooked a meal in this pan, set it down, and the ice had claimed it before they could come back. Depression-era homesteaders and trappers in Alaska often worked solitary routes spanning hundreds of miles. It was not unusual for a man to leave a camp and never return to it. The skillet now sits in a regional historical collection in Juneau. Number 24 is a hand-stitched wool blanket, recovered in 1941 from permafrost near the old Iditarod Trail. The blanket had been folded, carefully, deliberately, and wrapped in what remained of a canvas tarp. The wool itself was a dark navy blue, the kind of government surplus material distributed through New Deal relief programs in the early 1930s. Stitched into one corner, in uneven thread, were the initials EM. No one has ever identified who EM was. The blanket showed signs of repair, patched in at least 3 places with strips of different fabric, suggesting it had been someone's most valued possession. The thing they kept fixing because replacing it was not an option. Number 23 is a pair of hand-carved wooden snowshoes, found in 1936 by a group of civilian Conservation Corps workers clearing a trail near the Matanuska Valley. The frames were birch, bent using the steam-bending technique that indigenous Alaskan craftsmen had perfected over generations. The webbing was rawhide, still partially intact under the ice. What struck the men who found them was that the snowshoes appeared to have been made by 2 different people. One frame was expert work, the other noticeably cruder, as if a father had made one and was teaching a child to make the other. Number 22 is a glass medicine bottle, still sealed with its original cork, recovered near the Nenana River in 1944. The label had partially survived inside the ice. It read, Lydia E. Pinkham's Vegetable Compound, a patent medicine marketed heavily to women throughout the late 19th and early 20th centuries. The bottle was full. Someone had carried it all the way to interior Alaska, through territory that in the 1930s required weeks of overland travel to reach, and had never opened it. Whether it was a gift, a personal remedy, or simply something carried out of habit from a life lived somewhere else entirely, no one can say. Number 21 is a Winchester Model 1894 rifle, the lever-action .30-30 caliber that was the most common long gun in rural America for decades. This one was found in 1939, frozen into the bank of a creek near McGrath, still in a cracked leather scabbard. The rifle was not loaded. The scabbard had been cut, deliberately, with a knife, along one side, suggesting that whoever owned it had needed the leather for something else and had chosen the gun's cover as the material to sacrifice. The rifle itself was in surprisingly good condition, the action stiff but functional after cleaning. It was the kind of gun a man depended on for food. Leaving it behind was not a casual decision. Number 20 is a tin lunch pail, the kind issued to workers at mining operations across Alaska during the Depression years, found in 1937 near the remains of an abandoned gold dredging camp outside of Nome. Inside the pail, still sealed by the ice, were the remnants of a meal: hardtack, a strip of dried salmon, and what appeared to be a small amount of dried blueberries wrapped in cloth. The meal had never been eaten. The pail's owner had packed it, set it down somewhere they expected to return to, and vanished into the record the way so many Depression-era Alaskans did, quietly, without explanation, without a trace in any official document. If any of these objects hit close to home for you, drop a comment below and tell me which one got to you the most. The stories behind these things deserve to be heard. Number 19 is a handwritten letter, sealed inside a glass jar with a rubber gasket, recovered in 1945 from a permafrost deposit near Talkeetna. The letter was addressed to someone named Margaret Duluth. It was written on both sides of a single sheet of paper in a careful, educated hand. The content, which was transcribed by the archivist who processed the find, described conditions in an Alaskan mining camp in the early 1930s with remarkable specificity. The cold that cracked wood in the night, the relief payments that came weeks late, the names of men who had died that winter. The letter was never sent. The jar had been buried, not dropped. Someone had hidden it in the ground with the apparent intention of coming back for it. The Margaret in Duluth, whoever she was, never received what was written for her. Number 18 is a complete set of hand-cut playing cards, made from the stiff cardboard backing of a food packaging box, found frozen in a cache near Nick in 1940. Every card in a standard 52-card deck had been cut, shaped, and marked by hand, using what appeared to be pencil and ink. The suits were drawn rather than printed, and the faces, the kings, queens, and jacks, had been given distinctive features, as if modeled on real people the card maker knew. The level of care and craftsmanship that went into these cards spoke to something profound about the Depression. That when everything else was gone, people still needed play. They still needed something to gather around on a long, dark Alaskan winter night. Number 17 is a child's leather boot. Just one. Size approximately equivalent to a modern toddler's size 6. Recovered in 1942 from ice near the Susitna River. The boot had been resoled at least twice. The original sole had been replaced with a piece of rubber tire, and that in turn had been replaced with a cut section of thicker leather. Someone had kept this boot in service far past the point where most people would have discarded it. Finding only one raises questions that the ice has no interest in answering. Number 16 is an Alaskan gold pan, standard miner's issue, 12 inches in diameter, found in 1938 near Chicken, Alaska, frozen into a gravel deposit alongside 3 other panning tools. This pan had a notch cut into its rim, a personal marking system some miners used to identify their equipment in shared camps. The notch was distinctive, 2 cuts close together and 1 cut set apart, like a kind of crude signature. Efforts to match this marking against mining claim records from the 1930s identified 14 possible claimants in that region during that period. None of the records were detailed enough to narrow it further. Number 15 is a hand-carved pipe, found in 1936 near the 40 Mile River, made from a single piece of antler with a wooden stem inserted and sealed with pine pitch. The bowl had been used extensively, and the stem showed the deep tooth marks of a habitual smoker. Depression-era men in the Alaskan interior often went months without seeing another person. A pipe was company of a kind. It was something to do with the hands, something that structured the end of a workday, something that connected a man to a world that felt very far away from a frozen riverbank in the dark. Number 14 is a hand-bound field journal, recovered in 1943 from an ice deposit near Denali's eastern foothills during a military survey. The journal had been wrapped in oilskin and then frozen inside what appeared to be a deliberate cache alongside food stores that had long since deteriorated. The pages were partially legible. The entries, written in pencil, documented a trapping route, distances, weather conditions, trap yields, food consumption, with the precision of someone who understood that accuracy in those records was a survival matter. The last entry was dated February 14, 1931. After that, nothing. Number 13 is a glass photographic plate, a large format negative of the type used by professional photographers before the widespread adoption of film, found in 1939 near Seward. The plate had cracked but not shattered, and when researchers in later decades printed from it, a clear image emerged. A family of 5 standing in front of a log cabin, dressed in their best clothes, the children lined up by height. No names, no date written on the plate itself. Just 5 people in Alaska in the early 1930s who had the presence of mind, or the deep human need, to document that they existed. If you've been watching this whole way and haven't subscribed yet, now's the time. Hit that button. This kind of history deserves an audience. Number 12 is a hand-stitched canvas mailbag, the stenciled markings still partially visible on its side, recovered in 1941 from a creek bed near Talkeetna. The bag was empty, but the fact of its presence there, miles from any established mail route, suggested it had been used as a general carry sack by someone who had either acquired it legitimately through the Postal Service's surplus program or had simply taken an abandoned bag because in the Depression you used what you found. Canvas was canvas. A bag was a bag. Number 11 is a hand-forged axe head, found in 1937 near the Kuskokwim River, separated from any handle, with a maker's mark stamped into the steel that matched a small blacksmith operation in Anchorage that closed in 1929. The axe head was unusually well made for something produced in a small town shop. The grind was even, the steel clearly good quality. Someone had valued this tool enough to bring it deep into the backcountry. The handle was gone, probably long since used as firewood or simply rotted before the freeze came. But the steel lasted. Steel always lasts. Number 10 is a complete trapper's snare kit, handmade from braided wire and rawhide cord, found in 1940 near the Inaco River. The kit contained 37 individual snares of 4 different sizes, carefully coiled and organized in a leather pouch. The variety of sizes, small enough for squirrel, large enough for lynx, suggested the owner was an experienced, methodical trapper who had moved through the Alaskan wilderness with genuine skill and purpose. Trapping was not a hobby in Depression-era Alaska. It was an economy. Fur prices had collapsed along with everything else, but a man who knew how to set a snare could still eat. Number 9 is a leather-bound Bible, King James Version, recovered in 1944 near the old village of Ophir in the Kuskokwim drainage. The book's pages were badly damaged by moisture before freezing, but the cover had protected a significant portion of the interior. The family pages, the section at the front where generations recorded births, marriages, and deaths, were legible. 6 names. 3 generations. The last entry was a death, recorded in a shaking hand in early 1932. The Bible was the most personal object on this entire list, the artifact that most insistently insisted on the full humanity of the people who carried it. Number 8 is a hand-forged steel trap, a number 4 long spring model, found in 1938 near the Delta River, still set. Still cocked and ready to close on anything that stepped into it after more than 6 years under ice. The spring tension had barely degraded. Whoever had set this trap had never come back to check it, and the ice had taken it whole and held it in suspension, a small mechanical argument for why Alaskan winters are not hospitable to forgetting. The trap was carefully disarmed by the survey crew that found it. It is now in a private collection somewhere in Fairbanks. Number 7 is a hand-drawn map, recovered in 1942 near Chicken, Alaska, sealed inside a tobacco tin, showing a section of the upper 40-mile river drainage in extraordinary detail. The map indicated trail routes, water sources, cache locations, and what appeared to be claim boundaries, all drawn with the precision of someone who had walked every inch of that terrain. Several of the cache locations marked on the map were subsequently investigated, 2 of them were found to contain the remains of supply caches. Rusted cans, rotted flour sacks. Exactly where the map said they would be. Whoever drew this map knew that country the way a person knows their own name. Leave a comment below if you've ever found something unexpected buried or frozen. I'd love to hear it. Number 6 is a mechanical pocket watch, Swiss-made, recovered in 1939 from ice near the old Iditarod town site. The watch had stopped at 4:47. Whether it was morning or afternoon, no one can say. The case was engraved on the back with a dedication. To H.W. The miles between us mean nothing. The watch was wound, suggesting its owner had cared for it until close to the end. A pocket watch in the Alaskan wilderness in the 1930s was not merely a timekeeper. It was a connection to civilization, to schedule, to the idea that the world beyond the ice had a structure that still applied to you. Number 5 is a set of hand-carved bone dice, 6 of them, found in 1941 at an abandoned mining camp near Ruby. The dice were carved from what appeared to be moose bone, each face marked with dots burned in using a heated metal point. The dots were even. The dimensions were carefully measured. These were not rough camp toys, but precision instruments made by someone who either had an obsessive attention to detail or needed honest dice badly enough to take the time to make them right. Number 4 is a hand-operated phonograph, a small portable model produced in the late 1920s, found in 1943, frozen into the floor of a collapsed cabin near Wiseman. The mechanism was seized but intact. Beside it in the ice were 4 shellac recording discs, all cracked. The labels on 3 were illegible. The 4th was clear enough to read. It was a recording of Red River Valley by a performer whose name history has also lost. In a one-room cabin above the Arctic Circle during the worst economic collapse in American history, someone had carried a phonograph and 4 records several hundred miles into the wilderness. Think about what music meant to that person. Think about what it cost them to carry it. Number 3 is a hand-sewn doll, cloth body and painted wood face, recovered in 1940 from a frozen cache near Aniak. The doll was dressed in a miniature replica of a woman's dress, the fabric the same as a Depression-era house dress pattern that was widely distributed through mail-order catalogs in the early 1930s. The face had been painted with care. 2 careful eyes, a small mouth, a suggestion of a smile that someone had wanted a child to see every morning. The doll had been carefully wrapped in oilcloth before being placed in the cache, which means it was not lost. It was saved. Someone chose to protect it. Number 2 is a handwritten recipe book, recovered in 1946 from an ice deposit near Valdez. 43 pages of recipes written in 3 different hands across what appeared to be a 10-year span. The recipes were not for fine cooking. They were survival cooking. How to stretch a cup of cornmeal into a meal for 4. How to make bread without yeast. How to preserve salmon without salt when salt ran out. How to cook a porcupine. These were not recipes for pleasure. They were technologies for staying alive, and they had been passed between at least 3 people, each adding their own knowledge to the book, as if understanding that knowledge shared was knowledge that outlasted any one person's survival. And now we arrive at number 1, the most remarkable object recovered from Alaskan ice deposits dating to the Great Depression era. Found in 1951 near the old gold camp of Flat, in a permafrost deposit disturbed during a water main excavation, by a crew worker named Dmitry Shevchenko, who almost threw it away before his foreman told him to put it aside. It was a wooden box, roughly the size of a shoebox, sealed with pine pitch, wrapped in canvas, and tied with rawhide cord that had somehow held. Inside the box, protected from 19 years of freeze and thaw by 3 layers of careful packaging, were 47 photographs. 47 photographic prints on paper, not plates, still largely intact, depicting a single family's life in interior Alaska from approximately 1930 to 1935. There were photographs of a cabin being built, a garden being planted in the impossibly brief Alaskan summer, children at various ages, 1 infant, 2 older children, growing across the sequence of images, a man with a broad, dark-bearded face working a sluice box, a woman in a flour sack dress standing at a woodpile, not posing, just caught in a moment between tasks, her eyes looking somewhere past the camera. A Christmas morning with 3 wrapped gifts and a small spruce tree propped in the corner. A funeral. An empty chair. And then nothing. The sequence ends in 1935 with a photograph of the same cabin taken from a distance, as if the photographer was walking away from it. The family that lived these 47 moments has never been identified. Their names do not match any homestead record, any mining claim, any census entry that researchers have been able to find. They existed entirely outside the official record of their time, which means the only evidence that they were real, that they loved each other, built something, lost something, held on and kept going for 5 years in one of the most unforgiving landscapes on Earth, is 47 photographs in a pine-pitched box that the ice kept safe for 19 years and gave back to no one in particular. That is the Great Depression in Alaska. Not a statistic, not a policy. A family whose name we don't know, who chose to document their life anyway, who sealed the evidence of their existence in a box and buried it in the permafrost, apparently understanding that if they left it to chance, chance might save it. They were right. The ice of Alaska has always been a better archivist than we are. It takes without asking and returns without warning, and everything it gives back carries the same impossible weight of a life interrupted. 25 objects. 25 silences that used to be voices. The cast iron skillet still smelling faintly of bear fat. The letter to Margaret in Duluth that never arrived. The phonograph records, cracked but labeled. The Bible with 6 names and a shaking hand. The recipe for bread without yeast. The 47 photographs in a box built to outlast whoever built it. These people did not disappear. The ice just borrowed them for a while. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, I want to ask you one thing. Which of these 25 objects would you most want to know the full story behind? Put the number in the comments below. Not a like, not a share, just the number. 1 digit or 2. Tell me which one stopped you, because I read every single comment, and the answers you leave here will shape the next video I make. Thank you for watching. See you next week.